Hi everyone, it's been quite a while since my last video. As usual, nothing that new. But I thought it would be good to touch base and then talk about what's to come. So consider this a prologue of the rest of the channel. It's been a while because I've been working on quite a lot of commissions. After all, I have to put food on the table, generally to feed my cats and myself. But I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of the news that has been happening lately with, the recent cease and desist and kind of copyright claims that Games Workshop has been up to, and also the price hikes and everything. Generally, I'm a person who prefers to stretch my dollar when it comes to the hobby, and I kind of want to squeeze as many hours as I can out of a project just to get my money's worth. And the price of Games Workshop miniatures has become more and more inaccessible. After all, I am still a struggling artist, so I've been turning to some of my other hobbies. You can see the bulk of my last few videos are actually plastic model kits, Gunpla specifically, as well as 30-minute missions, and those are quite fun. So I'll be sort of leaning my content towards that. In addition, I will be working on a couple of other miniature lines. You can see in the intro sequence, the new one, I've got a couple of Raging Heroes miniatures that I've done. You can call them miniatures, but they're actually quite large. So you'll be seeing more of that. In terms of Games Workshop and Warhammer content, I will still be creating it, but suffice to say, because the new Warhammer Plus streaming service is going to feature painting and modding tutorials, I'll be avoiding that sort of content and then focusing more on the kind of content that I wouldn't expect Games Workshop to produce, just so that I don't step on their toes in the wrong way and then have to go through the massive inconvenience of removing specific things from my channel. Well, what you see in front of you and what you'll see in this video is sort of a prologue of things to come, specifically in terms of my LED installation projects. And the first one I have to introduce to you is it's a Storm Hawk interceptor, but you can see that I've modded it with a long tail to give it more of a helicopter gunship type of vibe. But the thing I wanted to talk about actually isn't that, it's actually the modification I've done on the inside. Now, with the chassis of the Stormhawk, one thing you can do is not glue the cockpit on, and when you don't glue the cockpit on, you'll find that there's a massive amount of hollow space in the back here for you to fool around with. And what I've done here is I've installed sort of a battery holder in the back just behind the cockpit. Oh, my cat's having a bit of trouble. Hold on, I'll be right back. Alrighty, I'm back. She couldn't get the door open, I had to help her. So, at the back of the cockpit I've installed a battery holder, and if I turn that battery holder on, and if I dim my lighting slightly, you see what I have here is that my display lights up. So the console lights up, and technically it doesn't actually light up. What I've done is I've painted fluorescent paint and installed a single ultraviolet LED there. So you've got this glowing console, and it's a relatively easy project to undertake. You just have to run those wires into a battery holder and make sure that you don't interfere with a lot of the space inside here. And with the canopy installed, you still have a very decent and dramatic glow inside. Let me just switch that off. So you've got sort of a nice amount of drama in there. So there's one project that I'm working on, and in terms of LED lighting up, let me just reconnect that cockpit. Oh yes, also there is a sort of a nice terrain. See, I've got some nice scenery on the base, and I've thickened the flight stand using an acrylic rod because the center of gravity has obviously changed due to the longer tail. Now, I'd like to talk about some of the other LED projects I've been working on. You will remember this if you follow the Instagram page, link below. And if you remember this, you'll know that what I've done is instead of using a battery holder, I've actually installed a flat magnet. It has cracked, but still does the trick. A flat magnet on the bottom where I can then pop a CR2032 battery, so you can play with it. And it's actually one of the earliest projects where I've done an installation of an LED, and this is done quite easily with a 3mm pink LED in the chest, which allows me to allow the light to leak out around the neck, make it look like sort of a Ghost Rider kind of vibe. I drilled out the gem in the middle of the chest as well. You can see, if I can just focus, drilled out the gem in the middle of the chest as well, so some light comes out through there. And this is one of the fun ones. Now, after I did that, I sort of did the same thing on a Lexus Assassin. In terms of flavor, I really like the Lexus Assassin, and what I've done is a very similar treatment, where in this case I've installed ultraviolet pico LED. Those are the smallest LEDs you can get commercially, and if I get the magnet seated just right, you can see that ultraviolet LED shines out of the animus speculum, and it turns out to be actually quite a dramatic effect. I'm quite happy with this one because you can actually set it down with sort of minimal interference to the appearance. So this is actually quite nice. After that, I realized that I really ought to start tidying up these miniatures. You can see from the bottom that it is rather messy with the magnets and all the epoxy all over the place. So I did this with Manius Kalgar. What I've done is I've installed that battery holder that you saw earlier, and now you have a switch, meaning that I can switch this on, and you can see the gauntlets of Ultramar light up along with his bionic eye. And this one is personal favorite of mine, naturally being an Ultramarines player as well, sort of gives me, makes me more partial to this model. It's a very nice sculpt in the first place, and I'm rather proud of the end result in this case. I actually had installed more LEDs in the back where the eagles, the aquili of his backpack, have light up eyes as well. Unfortunately, the current from a single CR2032 isn't enough to drive everything, so I had to sacrifice those to prioritize the muzzle flashes on his gauntlets and his bionic eye. All in all, I'm kind of happy with this one. Also, please do comment on the projects that you want me to go into more detail with. This is just an overview of those projects that I'm working on. Following the Manis Kalgar project, I actually went on to do the Abaddon, and out of all the LED projects that I've done, Abaddon is by far my favorite one because it's the most dramatic. Also, it is my first real attempt at doing a finished non-metallic metal treatment on his shoulder pads. So you can see in the bottom the same battery holder switched on with a nice muzzle flash on the lightning claw and a front chin underlighting and a backlighting on his head to sort of give really the Black Crusade poster look that Abaddon is so very much known for. This one's my personal favorite. Not a huge fan of Abaddon the character, but a huge fan of this specific sculpt and this specific project. You can see also I've magnetized his shoulder pads, so very tiny 2mm magnet there that really just goes in and pops into place firmly and doesn't really come out. Same on the other side there. Initially I had not glued his chest in as well, because one very nice thing about this miniature, you can remove the chest to see his black carapace underneath and so on, but I had to glue that in place, unfortunately, because I did not want to leave his top knot loose, and that top knot has to go in after the chest plate goes in. I also didn't glue in his cape because I really love the details on the back and I didn't want to sacrifice that as well. So that's Abaddon, but the most ambitious project in terms of LEDs I think would have to be this. This is Illuminor Zaras, and I haven't detailed the base yet, but you can see I have two. I mentioned earlier that on Manias his base was not big enough, I could only fit one battery holder in. On Illuminor, because you've got this large base, you can actually install two, and what that helps me do is have one with the full current of the LED running, just a single ultraviolet LED here, and that makes this one really bright and very, very reliable. I painted the interior of that ball of swirling blood in fluorescent paint, so that lights up nice and bright, and the other switch lights up his eye, and so we've got that bright eye and that swirl of power there. And if I dim this down, you'll see this one truly is very, very dramatic. A very, very fun project. Now all that's well and good because I've been basically putting the smallest LEDs I can find inside the individual components. It takes a little bit of drilling, but the one that takes the most work would be this one. This is the latest project that I've done. Mephiston converted with a pair of wings from the Eldari Drukari, I believe, Drukari Scourgers, and they have wings that scale very well with Mephiston. I love this sculpt. It's reminiscent of that old 1990s artwork, which I love a lot, and again with the non-metallic metal in the regions where I can afford to do it. But I've got one battery holder, which when I turn on, you'll see that lights up his eyes, and not only that, but it's got sort of a glow around the back of his neck as well, sort of to light up all that psychic hood sort of vibe. And the eyes are really, really tiny. I've got an earlier video where I show how this is done, But essentially what I've done is I've taken a pin vise, smallest one I can find, and drilled out his eyes, and then pushed a optic fiber into each one, and finally have a blue 3mm LED in his chest. When I switch on the blue LED in his chest, the light runs up the optic fibers and it kind of emanates from his eyes. That is really nice, if I do say so myself. So these are the projects I've been working on. These are the things that I am confident will probably not conflict with any of Games Workshop's copyright claims, because I don't know of many people who do this. I am certainly not the best at this. If you go on Instagram, there is a gentleman by the name of Chris Buxey who is really the inspiration for these projects, and he's done a fantastic job. But I do my best with these miniatures, and I think I've achieved something quite fairly interesting here, and I encourage all of you to stay tuned and let me know if you want me to walk through specifically how I carried out some of these projects. And if you do, let me know in the comments below so that I can spend a bit of time to break everything down for you. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next part of the prologue, where I talk about some of my plastic model kits and Plamo projects as well. Thank you and take care, and bye bye.